Hello everybody! Today I'm playing some Diablo 4 and I wanted to showcase you my Druid build here I'm currently playing called the Pulverize build. It's nothing, amazing or anything like that. It's basically the Wowhead build that they have ripped off, but it works really well. And the Wowhead guide is amazing. It has a lot of dense information in it, but it's also like a big wall of text and doesn't really show you how the build actually plays. So that's the first part I want to do. I want to show you how this build actually plays out so you can judge if it's something that you would enjoy playing for Diablo 4. After that I also want to talk a little bit about stats, because stats seems to be something they forgot to add to the guide, or I'm blind, could be either way. But I want to talk a little bit about my stat choices, and then I also want to talk about legendaries that you can get from them, or aspects, because there are two aspects that you can get very easily by going to certain dungeons and then crafting them for yourselves, that's gonna make this build from going from really good to an absolutely trucker of a damage build. So let's start off with the TLDR. How does this play? So basically we have a builder ability called Stormstrike, and we use that to build resources. After that we use those resources on Pulverize, and Pulverize hits like an absolute mad lad. Especially every 12 seconds if you play the build right, and we will get a little bit more into that later. The reason we are picking Stormstrike instead of something else is that it builds a lot of spirit for us, but it also debuffs enemies with the vulnerable debuff, and vulnerable enemies take 20% more damage. And since we're gonna build and then pulverize, it means that we will make a lot of those pulverizers do 20% more damage, which is just a big win-win. After that we also have this ability called Trample. This is really fun because we charge straight through the enemies and do an absolutely boatload of damage. And then we pulverize, everything kind of dies. Those are kind of small enemies, so don't really count, but those enemies are standing no chance against our Druid here. But that's kind of the core of the build, those three. We build with Stormstrike, we spend with Pulverize, and then we have Trample. Trample also an amazing ability for getting out of bad situations. Let's say you would stand here in the corner for whatever reason, and there is fire, and then you can just point the mouse on the other side of the screen, trample over, and get out of it. There are a couple of things that I want to add when I'm showing you this. When I trample, you see there's a lot of lines going about me. That is from a legendary effect, so that is not something that everybody will have access to directly, because that specific one is RNG. You can see these ones, right? The other one is that you can see this plates or spikes coming up here. This is another legendary, but that one is farmable. So those are maybe not something you will have as standard. If you don't see them, don't be confused. But I will tell you how to get one of those at least in a little bit. But yeah, on top of that we also have Earthen Bulwark. Earthen Bulwark is just a big shield we put on ourselves, so we become really tanky, and after you get the legendary it will be up for a total of 9 seconds every 16 seconds. So with the legendary you will have a lot of shield constantly going all the time. And even without that legendary, because I don't have that one currently, I'm super tanky. I literally can't die in this build. It's super tanky. So after I get that legendary, I'm pretty sure I will be unstoppable, which is fun. I also play with the wolves. So the reason that I play with the wolves is they don't do amazing amounts of damage, but they fix a couple of niche situations. So these are kind of hard to show at, but sometimes there will be a mage standing over here, and I don't want to leave melee because I'm hitting these guys, right? But this guy is over on the side, so then I can send the wolves to jump on them, and when they do actually a quite amount of single target damage. Also really good for bosses. But what they also do is that they take a lot of aggro from me, so you can see that if the enemies are close, they will very often kind of stay and hit the wolves. Not always, but a lot of them will, and they are very tanky, so they just end up protecting me, which is really nice. We also have this Grizzly Rage ability. You kind of just become the super bear for 10 seconds and you do more damage, you take less damage. Press it anytime it's off cooldown, basically, and otherwise play as you normally would. But yeah, that's kind of the short version of how the build plays. So let's just take a minute, kill a couple of packs, and just show how it works. So lots of mobs, we're just gonna trample over, we're gonna build a little bit on them, we cast our Pulverize, and yeah, and now they are very dead. Single target doesn't really change much, and just talking about the damage profiles for AoE in the open world, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it comes down to this 12 stack buff here that I will talk about in just a second. But if you're roaming open world, you will basically go from pack to pack, and when you're in a new pack, you will just one-shot everything that is, like a normal mob in it. The elite enemies will go down to, or the bigger mobs will go down to maybe 50% or something, but stuff dies really, really quickly. So the way this works is that Pulverize, we have a modifier on it. So you can see it's this one here, Enhanced Pulverize. Every second we spend above 80% health, we are considered healthy by the game. And then we get a stack. And at 12 stacks, our next Pulverize will overpower. So overpower, from what I understand, and I could be wrong on this, is kind of like crit, but crit is random. So sometimes you crit, sometimes you don't. Overpower works very similar to crit. The difference is that overpower instead is deterministic. So you might not really know if you go into crit or not, but with overpower, you kind of know what the criteria is. So in this case, we need to spend 12 seconds being above 80% HP, and then we know that we will overpower on our next hit. So that is why it's so good for open world, because you kind of like, you see, I basically one-shot this pack, and then I'm still 80% HP, right? And then we go to the next, and I'm already at 9 stacks here. So I can Pulverize, we can build a bit, I can Pulverize again if they didn't die. And so depending on how stacked the mobs are, you're going to have basically an overpowered Pulverize on every second pack, depending on, like, these guys are very, very tight here, right? So it's absolutely ridiculous damage when it comes to the open world. And when it comes to dungeons, you get it every second pack, but you're just one-shotting things, so you're going through the dungeons really, really quick. It's also really, really good on bosses. So both Pulverize and Trample do a fair amount of damage regardless. Like, they are best in AoE, of course, but the wolves help in a single target, and also just being super tanky hands helps in single target because you don't really have to move out. So that's kind of like how you play and how you kind of get the most out of your build. There are a lot of small nuances to the build, and if you want to know about them, you can read about them on Wowhead or look through the points you're picking in your skill tree, but this is all you need to know to really get a lot out of this build. But let's talk a little bit about stats. So for the, I guess it's called main stats or something in this game, willpower is the one that I've chosen to try to get as much as possible on. And the reason for that, it increases my overpower damage and my skill damage. So both two really good stats to increase the damage I do in this build. If I would probably go dexterity after that if I can. It increases crit, and we have some things that increases crit damage and stuff like that, but as you can see, I have absolutely abysmal crit currently, and we don't really build too much around crit in this game, or in this build. Strength seems to do very little, we are tankier. Intelligence seems to give us some protection. Honestly, I don't really know how this works, but from what I can read here, it seems to be willpower that I want to go for. After that, we want to get skill ranks. So if you can get any skill ranks in the Pulverize or the Trample, that's a really good place to be. I have on my gloves here, so I have 2 ranks of Pulverize, so these are really hard to switch out, and that's why they are also intelligence. I don't really want intelligence, but they have overpower damage and Pulverize on them. Overpower damage is kind of the next one. So you very often find overpower on, like you have maces here, for example. Maces have overpower damage on them. So I have, I can't really move the mouse, but maces, I think, come standard with overpower damage. And then you can also slot in the red gem for even more overpower damage. And that's why my overpower Pulverize hits the absolute trucks, which is really, really fun. After that, you can kind of go for like close combat damage, you can go for a little bit of crit. There are a lot of stuff that will help you out in some way, but those are the stuff that I would focus on, and you don't really have too much option here while leveling to be super picky. When we get into the late game, depending on what I'm playing then, I will probably have to do another guide, or maybe check out a guide on Wowhead or something like that, because there are more knowledgeable people than me. But I talked about legendaries, and that's kind of the last part of this video. So I want to show you what 2 legendaries that you want to get to really get the most out of this build. So first off, we want to get this one, Aspect of the Mending Stone. So what this one does, it increases the duration of our Earthen Bulwark from the standard 3 seconds up to a 9 seconds. So we have now a 9-second shield on a 16-second cooldown. So it's going to be up for us a lot. In addition to that, if we kill an enemy with an Earth skill, it gives, more shield as long as the shield is currently active. So you pop shield, you kill a bunch of mobs, and you get bigger shield. So hopefully the shield will last the entire 9 seconds and not get destroyed before that, right? That's kind of the plan. The problem with that is that we have physical, 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 lightning damage, physical. So how do we do earth damage in this build? And that's where the second legendary comes in. So there we have this Aspect of the Ursine Horror. Pulverize is now also an earth skill. After casting Pulverize, Tectonic Spikes continue to deal damage over 2 seconds. And it's those you can see here, right? So the way this works is that you pop Earthen Bulwark, you go into a pack, you destroy everything with a guaranteed overpower Pulverize, everything dies, you have super big shield. If ever anything has survived, you now have a super big shield, right? And also great for bosses, you pop the shield, you destroy some of the mobs around the boss, the small mobs it summons with Pulverize, and now you have a really chunky shield so you can just stand there and tank the boss. There is one legendary, but as far as I can tell, this one is something that you have to get from a drop or something similar to that. It doesn't seem like you can get it from a dungeon, but it's the one that I have here called Choker of the Trampled Earth, or I'm not sure if it has to be on a necklace. But basically, when you trample, you also cast landslides, and trample becomes an earth skill, an earth and nature skill. You can see here when I trample that I get these big earth smashy things behind me. So that is something that I got a bit lucky with, and it's the reason that I wanted to try this build out. But if you do get this one, it's really, really good. So how do you get the other 2 ones, and the ones that I showed you in the codex? It's actually, it's a little bit time consuming, but it's not very hard. So if we zoom out here on the map, you have Kjovashad, or however you pronounce that, which is the main city, right? Here we have the Nevesk waypoint, which is the starting zone. So you probably have this if you have run back to the starting area. And if you keep heading west, so we have Nevesk here, you keep heading west into this area, run over, you can pick up ruins of Quaranisu, and then you get over here to the Sealed Archives. In here you get the one that gives us a longer duration on the shield. So this is the first one that I would personally get, because that shield is absolutely amazing for surviving. The other one is down here in the lower right corner, called Belfry Sakara. And to get there, I started in Margrave, which usually most people have it just south here of Kavashad, and then you run along this little windy road. There is a side quest here you can do on the way. The side quest is basically to run to this waypoint, which you may as well get when you're down here, right? And from this place, I would actually not go this route maybe. I would probably take the right route instead. It seems to be a little bit quicker. The reason is that this place was kind of annoying. It seems to be... I'm not sure if you have to do it, but you kind of have to spiral inside all the way to the middle. And when you're in the middle, you have to spiral all the way out again to get out. But as you can see, there are some Alteron Liliths and stuff that you can get along the way. And I also decided to run down here to Backwater to get this, this waypoint. And you're gonna waste some time running here. You're not gonna level as quickly as you're running through here since you're not doing any quest, but you will have to run to Backwater at some point during the game, so you may as well just do it now, and when you need to get here in the later stage of the game, you now have a free teleport, right? So very quick way to get down there if you like. But yeah, that's kind of the entire build, and I hope you like this showcase and quick guide on how to play Pulverize Druid. Let me know if you enjoyed it or not in the comments, and have a wonderful day.